I am Brad Keelor. They are Dove, Aura, and Ben Leshchinsky. Next up on Director's Cut, find out what it's like to work on an engineering project with your entire family. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member. They have stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, and all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this interview today, you should head over to geo-institute.org, and there, among many other things, you will learn that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. If you like what you see today, and I can almost guarantee you will, can't quite guarantee, but I can almost guarantee you will, you should click like, subscribe, get notifications, and if you do those things, we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Now, you have consulted your handy calendar, viewers, and you know that when you are watching this, tomorrow is Thanksgiving Day in the United States of America. So we had to bring you a very special Thanksgiving episode. That's why I wore my pumpkin orange today and got all prepared for it. And Thanksgiving means many things. One of those things is, of course, family. And so what better thing to do than have an engineering family on the show? So we are joined today. This is going to be a mouthful, so I might skip all the job titles and everything because it's enough on its own. We have Dove Leshchinsky. We have Aura Leshchinsky. We have Ben Leshchinsky. And they're going to tell us a lot of stuff about themselves. Thank you guys for coming on the show and for doing it together.
It's a lot of Leshchinskys, but it's good to be here. Thank you. Maybe too much Leshchinsky.
We'll let the viewers be the judge of that. We have 10 questions the same way that we do every week. Most of them will be for all three of you, and then we have one question each for you guys individually. We will start with one of the ones that we ask everybody every week. Describe your jobs in 45 seconds. Dove, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, it's a tough request when you ask a question like this of a retired person. What's my job description? Well, every day is like Sunday for me. But I find myself waking up every morning early, looking forward for what to do today. And that's 7 days a week. I help managing the software company we have, provide advice, technical support to users, conduct research with colleagues around the world on slope stability and reinforced soils. In short, developing short courses, just finished one for NHI on slopes and embankments, finished research on NCHRP a year ago. And so my job, in addition to the professional things, is also including traveling to interesting parts of the world. That's tough, but somebody has to do it. So just last week, returned from from Chile. So it was wonderful. Torres del Paine. So what can I say?
Aura, do you want to go next?
Sure, why not? I am the computer programmer. I am, as described by my husband, Ladybug. I am the coffee maker. He is the tea maker. I clean, I secretary, I do everything else. In other words, the normal.
And Ben, you got to go last here, I guess.
No problem. Last and least, yeah, I I have the typical job of a professor. So, I have the privilege of mentoring graduate students. Some terms I teach, which is fun and challenging. Research is a big part of my job. So writing, coding, and really, if I'm lucky, my favorite part of the job is putting on some boots and getting outside for field work. My favorite part of the job is honestly digging holes and seeing what I find. I guess I don't need a degree for that too much, but it's my favorite part.
Well, but you need the degree to know what you find once you get down in that hole. You wouldn't want to take a core just to do it.
The thing is, I still don't know what I find in the hole. So, hey, there's that, right? Yeah.
We have to ask the fun questions on Director's Cut too, and sometimes they border on the ridiculous, and I'm not really sure where I came up with this next one, but I think we're going to get some good answers here, so we're going to go with it. If the three of you were in a family band, what instruments would you play? Who's going to start on this one?
I would play the violin. It goes to the heart. It's emotional.
Neither. All of the above. All the instruments or the custodian, my favorite. I like to be in the background.
Yeah, I'll give you the realistic answer here. Aura would play all the instruments, and Dove and I would give her bad advice about how to play them. That's probably what it would be. She'd be a great band, though. Bad management, but a good band.
You guys could put the violin out front. It'd be a non-traditional kind of arrangement. I think.
Hey, Mom, time to learn the violin.
Another one.
And better play it nicely, like Itzhak Perlman.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost.
So we always include a research or practice question in the Director's Cut interview. I thought that it might be interesting here if for this one, we have you guys give us a research or practice area where you disagree. And we don't have to have the debate right here. We just want to know about an area that you disagree on. I mean, many families will sit down to dinner on Thanksgiving Day and have a disagreement about something. So I guess this is a little preview.
So I think that this question would be easy to answer if it was related to politics, but it's not. So in terms of research, professionally, I am a person who is dealing with rigorous analytical solutions, which have limited applications. Whereas Ben is dealing with has no problem, that's what I think, with making assumptions and dealing with much larger type of problems, which is important. So each one, we are not disputing each other, but each one has its own preference in terms of research topics.
I think.
Do you want to rebut that, Ben?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. I'll take my time here. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. Dove, he's pretty into the rigorous mathematics behind, say, slope stability problems or reinforced soil problems, and I appreciate that. Certainly, I do. But I don't necessarily get hung up in the details about interslice forces or things like that. I more see those tools as a vehicle or a platform to answer more scientific questions. And so I think that's probably one area where we might defer. Perhaps another thing is maybe the role of statistics or empirics. I'm pretty sure if you want to spend 4 hours on this interview, you can ask Dove what he thinks about empirical solutions. I personally don't share as strong an opinion about that as he does. When you come up with a deterministic answer, it's beautiful, but a lot of times we don't know all the factors. So I kind of waver back and forth between those things. So don't ask about cohesion either. This will just get ugly.
Aura, what about you?
Well, I like tedium. Anything tedious is my favorite. I listen to those two guys talking, and I enjoy absorbing it and then putting it in writing in a computer code. It's really fun to observe. I do not disagree with anything.
So I think the logical. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. I was saying she's the only one who actually makes real stuff happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
translate theories to practice, where engineers can use it actually in design. And that's a special talent.
I think the logical follow-up here is, why do you think you guys do disagree on things? I mean, obviously there's some human nature, but at some point you're in the same field. Do you think it has to do with educational background or anything like that, or is it more personality driven?
I would say it's personality driven more than anything. I don't know if I should be proud or embarrassed that I've been learning about slope stability since I've been a teenager. So I suppose some of the disagreement stems from me trying to rebel, just like the old days, I suppose.
Well,
But yeah, I think actually largely it also has to do with kind of the different trajectories that we've taken in our careers in terms of what we study. I kind of work to some level in the geosciences as well as geotechnical engineering, and Dove is more in applied math, slope stability, and kind of like the pure mechanics side of things. So I think that's probably, Dove, what do you think? Is that an accurate description there?
it is. It is. Also, when you're a researcher, you start, you have a hypothesis, and you start in a negative way. You have to prove that the hypothesis works. So that leads to disagreements because there is no clear cut usually. That's why I'm taking the easy way out and only with analytical formulation where I can get a nice closed form solution, and that's good for me, but that's may not be a reflection of reality, which is much more complex usually. So, yeah.
I like that. So we do have one question for each of you, and we're going to do a couple of those now. The first one is for Dove. In 2013 at Design and Practice Conference in Italy, you were honored with a commemorative book about your career. At ASCE, we call these honoraria, and sometimes there's some pretty funny stuff in these. We did one for Jean-Louis Briot a few years ago, and someone wrote a paper about the geotechnics of the tennis court in his backyard, in Jean-Louis' backyard. So for you, Dove, when you got this book, which was like over 700 pages long, I think I saw, what was the most surprising thing in the book?
First of all, that there were so many papers, and some of them were very good, by the way. But really, the most emotional things that honored me and made me humble were the introduction, which I've not seen before, written by Professor Holling, Professor Jihan, and Professor Tatsorka, three big names. And it was on the personal side. Also, I noticed that Ben was telling my insignificant story of life in about 10 pages, or I don't know, 5-10 pages there with photos and so on. So it was quite emotional, and for me, that was very significant. The papers were very good, technical papers. Number of participants was quite high for coming from 5 continents. I did not expect it. So that's great honor, obviously. But the personal things were really emotional for me.
I got to have a follow-up to Ben on that one. What was it like to write your dad's life story like that? I mean, was that the first time you had really sat down and thought about it as a unit? Because I don't know if I've ever done that for my parents.
That's a fantastic question, Brad. And you're spot on. I mean, when you're somebody's child, no matter what they do, you kind of take their life story for granted. You kind of just assume it's there. You hear it in little bits and pieces, but you don't necessarily put the thought into how all those things connect. So for me, it was a learning experience, and it was impressive to me. It makes you appreciate the journey that your elders have taken. So it was pretty special. It was pretty special, I'd say. It's I'm not sure all of it stuck with me at this point. I still forget details, but it certainly made me appreciate all that my parents have done for me.
Well, and now it's in print. If you ever do forget, you can just go
Yeah,
consult that. It's right there handy for you.
yes.
Exactly.
Oh, so Aura, the next question comes right to you. I notice you have an architecture degree, which isn't, I mean, you're not the only person in civil engineering with an architecture degree, but it's not common either. How did that give you a unique perspective on projects throughout your career?
Well, let me tell you like that. When I did my first degree, I was very young, and it was civil engineering, and I did a favor to my parents. However, I wanted to be an architect. So I did get a degree in architecture, and I realized that I am not the greatest architect in the world because I am not an artist. I am too much of precision in everything I observe. And I do observe, that's my nature. And it's good to still know that 1 + 1 = 2, and that's in engineering. In architecture, 1 + 1 is more or less 2, which is a big difference. And that implied a lot in the way I write the software. People come with different brains. Some look at numbers and satisfied. Some look at picture and don't care less about a number. I try to combine all those brains, or the way brains are looking at a software or a product. In my case, it is a software. And I think my approach is pretty much embedded in the software, the way architecture taught me as well.
I have to ask you a follow-up question about coding, writing software. I think back to when I was in middle school and high school, and my computer science class in high school was, what year was that? 1995. I don't remember how many girls were in the class. It wasn't a lot. It definitely was not a 50-50 gender balance. What was that like for you, being a woman and being a software engineer?
Well, I was not a woman. I was a young girl. And I did not study computers per se. For me, the first introduction to a computer was in that big building with air conditioning, with all the people. That was my computer. I had strips to write code on, teletypes. And later on came the PCs. I am old, as I mentioned before. So it's a language, basically, and I'm good at languages. I speak a couple, and I speak also computers. So being a girl, a male or a female, I don't think it makes much of a difference. Right. It just humans are programmed to look at females as probably inferior, which I do not agree.
I think, and to follow up on that, I think Ora is downplaying the fact that she has kind of broken some barriers on her own. She's always been in the minority, being in STEM, in engineering, and maybe she hasn't really thought so much about the gender imbalance, but she's always been tough and just worked through it. And it's one thing that makes me very proud of her. It really is.
I can add one anecdote, which is quite interesting. We were sitting next to each other in high school. So that's since the age of 14, since 1964. And that high school was a unique high school, 46 hours a week, 6 days a week. And it was ordinary high school plus profession. We are both electronic technicians. And it's high level, it's mathematics and lab, and so Ora was there were about 30 students in that class. Ora was the most beautiful girl in class, but she was the only one. Now, by virtue of graduating at that time with electronic degree, technician degree, this was a break. Well, it's a major achievement. Talking about 1968. Yeah. Then she went to do her first degree in the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology, civil engineering. There were probably less than 5 females in a class of well over 100. And she made it too. So she's a pioneer in a sense. In the software development that she's doing, also it's amazing what she can do. Now, she is underestimating herself, which is good for me because I take the credit there. Credit goes to her, you know. So
that was great. And thanks, Dov and Ben, for weighing in on that one too, and being less humble for her.
yes.
So the other question that we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is, how did you first get involved in ASCE and GI? And I don't know who wants to start with that one.
I can start. I need to go back to 1977. That's when I started, or 1976, when I started my master's degree in the Technion, in geotechnical engineering. And I realized that I need some good literature. So I became a member, associate member of ASCE in 1977. And I got the publication, Geotechnical Journal and others related, published by ASCE. That provided me with a lot of course, professional background, but it led the way to knowledge, to get answers to questions that I had. So it was the first step. Then after getting my PhD in the United States in 1982, I became a member. I did more traditional work related to ASCE, and later on when GI was created, becoming a member of the Emerson and Banquets Committee, as editorial board member for 10 years with the Geotechnical Journal, organizing sessions in ASCE geotechnical conferences, and so on. That was the traditional. And lastly, I would say from 95, I believe, until 2020, I was, I think, the only member from academia in high-tech evaluating MSC walls, reviewing many reports that were published approving those systems, as well as reviewing countless numbers for ASCE. So for me, it was essential part of my career.
That's great, and that's what we love to hear. Who wants to go next?
Ben?
Sure. I suppose that, like many things in my life, I never really thought too deeply about why. I should probably be a bit more introspective. But my first experience with the GI was actually the Geo-Congress in Dallas in I think it was 2010, maybe 2011.
2011, Geotechnical Frontiers, yeah.
Exactly. And that kind of opened my eyes to all the diversity of topics people work on in geotech. And ever since then, owing to, meeting people and working with lovely people from all around the country, I've just been involved in committees, editorships, all that stuff. And it's just kind of happened. I wish there was a more profound story behind it, but yeah, here I am, and I'm happy.
Some weeks we get the great stories, and some weeks it's just like that I just got involved, and here I am.
Sorry, I wish I had something.
That's okay. Don't worry. That's why that question's always in there. We want to show everybody's different experiences. Aura, what about you?
Well, I was always behind Dov, as I said. He would point at, this is an interesting article, and I'll glimpse at it and try to get what's he talking about. But pretty mild involvement in that respect. That's about it. Sorry. That's
okay. We go to Ben now, and this is, as I labeled it on here, the Ben question. I always do a little bit of homework before we do the interview, and in doing it for this week, I found that you've done some photography, and you've done like legit photography. How do you feel like your photography, and the words I used were habit, hobby, expertise, contribute to your engineering work?
Well, two things on that. It's somewhere between a habit and a hobby, definitely not expertise. And the other thing is I'm flattered to know that somebody besides my mom actually looks at my photography. So thank you. You've made my day. Actually, it's a great question because indirectly it's helped me a lot with my job. I do a lot of work at kind of large spatial scales or using remote sensing data. And a lot of that is based on the same principles of photos and image processing and the data that's stored. So to a level, when I started dabbling with, say, LiDAR or digital elevation models or the likes of that, I kind of understood the basics of data curation and how to manipulate it from the beginning. And that's kind of been just fun for me, a great way to merge a habit or a hobby, whatever you want to call it, with what I do. So yeah, it's worked its way in, which is great too, because, I have to admit, I don't take nearly as many photos anymore. As I mentioned before, kids have somewhat displaced any time for a hobby or a habit. So at least I get to do it professionally for my job.
Now, I don't know anything about that. Kids taking over your free time, but it's an investment, right?
Who knew?
So I guess the follow-up there is you got, was it a Reader's Choice Award from National Geographic or Editor's Pick, or I can't remember exactly what it was. How did you get that news? And I mean, were you surprised?
I was surprised. I generally take photos just because it gives me satisfaction. And that was one of the few times I ever entered a contest. My wife said, this photo's cool, you should do it. So I did it, and I was kind of surprised that, I got some attention. But in the end, while I'm very flattered by that, I enjoy the photo more on my wall, frankly. Yeah, it was pretty neat to get the recognition, but let's put it like this. I can't pay the power bill with that recognition. So there's that,
Many things in life are like that. Yeah.
Can I add something to that? In several occasions, Ben and Dov were having both their cameras looking at the same picture and taking the same object. Somehow it turned out that Ben's pictures of the same thing that Dov was taking were much better. And I cannot describe better, but they were.
Element of art, which the ordinary person like me does not have any talent in that respect. He has a special eye. In fact, it's a father bragging about his son,
Oh,
it's
man.
a little bit strange.
Right.
I would rather brag about my grandkids, but but he had, I don't know that he mentioned, a photo on in ASCE whatever calendar, bridge calendar
Bridges.
in 2015 or something like this, in Newport, Oregon.
So
yeah,
National Geographic, ASCE Bridges calendar. I mean, the Bridges calendar wins 100 times out of 100, right?
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I agree. I love that photo.
And now that I know that, we can put a link down to that in the show notes below this, because all those end up on the ASCE website too. So we've got 3 questions left, and they're for everybody, the panel, as we will call it. And this one, you're going to have to go one at a time. Either professionally or personally, what makes you proudest of the other family members? And I don't think we've started with you yet, Ben, on one, so we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's lots of things that make me proud of my family, both personally and professionally. I'll start professionally. Just that, I'm very fortunate, incredibly fortunate that, I've always had 2 mentors professionally. I think that's rather unusual to have, your family members serve as a professional mentor. And then it's an interesting line to walk. But, in moments of stress or professional uncertainty, or just, needing to know how to navigate the system of academia, I've always been fortunate to have my mom and dad. They're giving me maybe sometimes cynical, but very practical advice to help me navigate it. And the cynicism is often deserved. So it makes me proud that they're willing to share their time selflessly with me for stuff that, other people might just say, hey, Ben, stop whining. That's pretty cool. But more important than that, personally, besides just being loving parents, I'm really proud of the grandparents they are. My wife and I, we have 2 young children, and it's just amazing to see their devotion to them. They're way less hard on them than they were on me, though. That's my only complaint. But it makes me very proud of who they are, especially as grandparents. I think that's a beautiful element for our shared stage in life.
And that I won't call it a lack of discipline, but different discipline from the grandparents on the grandkids. That I think that's universal. That happens everywhere.
I think that's true.
Aura, do you want to go next?
Yes, I can tell. I was giving advice to Ben's wife when she was somewhat complaining. She doesn't complain as usual, but I told her that in life you would have 99% of the time boring, exhausting, tiring, but that 1% of sudden burst of a statement, of a gesture, would make up 100 times on all the boredom and the tedious that there is. So a few days ago, this rascal told me, when he was talking to his daughter, oh yes, grandma was tough as nails when she was young. That statement stuck in my head for a long time, still is, and it makes up for all the times that he did not call, and I still remember those times. So yeah, I like that guy.
Dov, what about you?
Well, so we talked already about Aura breaking the glass ceilings, several glass ceilings, so that's of course. But I would add that Aura, if I had any success in life, 52% goes to Aura. So that's to start with. Then Ben obviously has some accomplishments that make us proud. And the most important one is that he produced 2 wonderful grandchildren and is married to a wonderful daughter-in-law. So that I cannot deny. Now, professionally, I can add that the first class that Ben had in soils was given by me. He was an undergraduate student at the University of Delaware. And I had a reputation of a demanding teacher. The fact is that this class motivated him to continue his studies in geotech and even seek an academic career, show that I did something right, I guess. So I'm proud of myself, but I'm proud of him, obviously. His record is self-evident, so I don't need to sell it. And he has been conducting research in areas which I have little knowledge in, meaning that he's flying by himself now, which is great. That's what a parent wants. Now, I have to mention that I have another son who is a bit older, Nathan. He felt comfortable working as a technician, not continuing his studies. And he has been working probably 10 years already as a soils technician with a reputable company in Philadelphia. And he is happy, and this makes us happy too. So those are the 3 levels of happiness. So we have 4.
That's pretty good. And that's why we have a Thanksgiving episode every year, because that was great.
Well, I'd like to follow up with one little note.
Go for it.
This guy was such a tough teacher that despite me, doing well in every exam and mostly on the homeworks, he still gave me a B- in soil mechanics. Brutal.
Hey, you have to be excellent to get an A. You are not excellent. So.
We have 2 questions left, and they're ones that anybody can answer, I guess, and we'll see how this works out. again, it's kind of a unique experience when other members of your family are in the same discipline. And I'm sure you have had professional conference experiences together as a unit, either part of you or all of you. What was the first conference experience that involved all three of you?
Yeah, I think the first one, all three of us, was in Bologna in 2013. Ben is young. I mean, professionally, he got his PhD, I don't know, in 2012 or 11, something like this. But I can add that Ben and I participated in a workshop when he was an undergraduate student. At that time, in the 2000s, I had experimental work done, shake table tests on 3 meter high, 10 feet high MSC walls in Tsukuba City in Japan. So I had to travel, I don't know, 10, 12 times to Japan, leaving on Thursday, getting to Tokyo on Friday evening, doing the test on Saturday and flying back on Sunday. One of the times, after he took his undergrad class, I said, would you like to join me? Okay, sure, why not? Have sushi in Tokyo is better than in Newark, Delaware. So we got there, and Professor Tetsuoka, who is a good friend of mine, organized a workshop. And so there was a workshop on Sunday for American kid to have something done on Sunday except watching football is something different. And it was, I hope he enjoyed it. It certainly gave him a flavor of what is professional interaction, especially a day after watching a shake table test where 50 tons of soil is being subjected to excitation of a Kobe earthquake. Must be exciting. So that, I think, was something that I remember him sitting there and watching people discussing issues that he did not understand much, but nevertheless got the impression of the profession.
I think the shake table is what hooked me. Really, all I remember, likely from jet lag, was the shake table test and the curry katsu I had. I think afterwards, it was pretty good, quite good.
Solid memories, both. So we have mentioned a couple times that this is the Thanksgiving episode, and so we cannot go all these questions without asking you guys, what was your most memorable Thanksgiving? And I don't know who wants to lead off with that one.
No,
I'll go with this one. I'll do it. So, we had Thanksgiving quite a bit growing up, but our family doesn't really adhere to necessarily like holidays or traditional holidays or stuff like that. So, there's been gaps of years where we don't do Thanksgiving. Frankly, I don't think that Dove and Ora are huge fans of turkey anyways. But, the good news is, well, just this coming week, we'll have Thanksgiving together. So hopefully we'll have a good story for a follow-up right there. But usually any dinner we have, we argue about, geotech, cohesion, whatever you want to think about, man. It's that's the typical. You guys can follow up if you feel differently.
So all I can say, oddly, as Ben mentioned, it is not really my memory of Thanksgiving is not related to a family event, but a professional event. In 2005, while teaching the introductory course to soil mechanics, I had to appear in a superior court in Sydney, Australia, as an expert witness on progressive failure of seawall, MSC wall, that supported the runway, the third parallel runway into Botany Bay. And so this was an extensive 3 days under cross-examination by a very talented barrister and a smart judge. I would say that I learned to appreciate the process through the court system 4 or 5 months later when the judgment was issued by the judge, 400 pages, out of which 2/3 were related to geotechnical topics, and Judge Einstein, that's his real name, explained what is hydraulic gradient and what is turbulent flow and what is compaction in much better way than I've seen in any textbook. So I'm responsible for Judge Einstein becoming an expert in geotechnical engineering and rendering the right judgment at the end, supporting my evidence.
That was Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. Yeah.
A little bit different than most people who are just like, oh, one time when I was 12, we went to the parade.
Well, you know, Brad, we'll come back with what the friction angle of stuffing is by next week, buddy.
I like that. So I got one bonus question for the three of you. Newark versus Corvallis, better college town.
Oh, I don't want to make my UDEL friends mad.
That's why I put you on the spot there.
You know, Delaware's, there's things I miss about Delaware, mainly the main things being clear winter days, thunderstorms and lightning bugs, diversity. There's a lot more diversity out there, which I miss. But, you know, out in Oregon, I can walk out my doorstep and be in the middle of nowhere in a forest in like 5 minutes. And, you know, Corvallis is a wonderful place. The ocean's there. The mountains are there. It's tough to beat the West Coast, man. I'm sorry. Don't mean to rub it in. You got your sunshine, that's for sure, but Oregon's pretty great.
Home of tax-free shopping. Like that doesn't.
Delaware was too, man.
Oh, wait! You have no taxes in Oregon?
No taxes. No sales tax.
I've
Property taxes high.
This goes unreported in the national media. We all think it's just Delaware.
I think there is one county in Texas also that has no taxes.
There you go.
Wow. So if you're going to buy a fridge, you have more than one option. That's right. Amazing.
Come to Oregon.
And then, of course, you'll go home to your home state and report that purchase to the authorities and pay the requisite sales tax.
Of course.
I don't want us getting in trouble over a director's cut episode. But the three of you made it through all the questions with flying colors. This was a fantastic Thanksgiving episode. For all of our viewers out there, if you liked what you saw, and I always say you probably did because you're here at the end, again, click like, subscribe, get notifications, and we will let you know every single time we post something to the YouTube channel. Dove, Aura, Ben, thank you for doing this. Thanks for all the answers, and thanks for getting along so that we could do this. I make it sound like you don't ever get along. I mean, thanks for being such a great family and being willing to do this. That's what I really mean by that.
Thanks for the opportunity. We'll argue after this.
And for all of our viewers and to everybody out there in geotech land, have a great Thanksgiving. And we will see you with another brand new Director's Cut next week.
Happy